Hello, welcome back to the Fangirl Fantasy Podcast. I am Julie Russell, and today we have Brianne Fleming on this week's episode. How are you?
I'm doing well. So happy to be here and to talk about fangirling in particular. I know you mentioned that you haven't really covered the Backstreet Boys on this podcast, so I'm excited to dive into that era of fangirling, if you will.
I started following you on Twitter probably like the beginning of the pandemic, I want to say, because I think I was just Twitter searching like fangirls, like things like that. And you have professional fangirl in your Twitter bio. And so you popped up as like a target. And then I saw I'm like, oh, she does marketing. She has her own site. And I'm like, okay, this is just someone that I would want to follow because you have the same interests as me.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So that's how I found your social and kind of how this came about. You are a huge Backstreet Boys fan.
Yes. Die hard.
How long have you been a fan of them for?
Probably since 97 or so when I was in, second or third grade. Yeah.
Is that a Backstreet Boys pillow that's behind you right now?
It is. It's a pillow that my husband got me actually of my meet and greet photo. It's actually they're all sequins. It doesn't look like it from far away, but
that's a great
so
gift.
They're always with me. I snuggle with the pillow. I'm snuggling with them. It's perfect.
That's amazing. So you do marketing, you have a podcast. You also, which I love, is do a thing on Twitter called the Pop Chat, which is you come up with topics and for example, the one I participated in, you're like, what do you think about when you think about the color red? And for me, I was like, oh, Taylor Swift's album. And that's kind of the topics. You just kind of pop culture topics, but in the marketing field of just conversations that are going on. Is that correct?
Right. And that really stemmed from the fact that I also teach online courses in marketing at the University of Florida. And as I was putting my lecture material together over the years, I started using pop culture references in my lectures. And I realized that you don't have to look just at Nike or Apple or Starbucks as examples of great brands, that there are musicians and even just actors, actresses, anything in movies or sports, all of these people and celebrities and groups that we worship and fangirl over, they're brands as well. And that just the fact that I started including these references and takeaways in my lectures, that really snowballed into the podcast, which is where I pretty much do the same thing. I'll take a topic in pop culture and dissect some marketing lessons from it. And also in, the Twitter chat, which is really a recap it's a little bit more timely because it's a weekly recap of things going on in pop culture that week and what we can learn from them. So it's really timely, really up to date, and it's really focused on marketing lessons from trending topics.
I didn't know that was a class thing, which is great because I do see you get a ton of engagement on it. Is it extra credit to students if they comment and engage or repost it?
I've thought about that. I've thought about pushing them to the Twitter chat. I get a lot of former students that really start making their way into the Twitter chat. But I don't know, maybe next semester I'll have to sweeten the deal and offer some extra credit if they join.
When did you see because like I said, there's always people commenting. There's people always engaged in the conversation of what's going on. When did you really see that start picking up? Was it because, I think with marketing and social media, you think if I just went to your page like, oh my God, she just probably started tweeting and it happened overnight. But I'm sure it was a buildup. I'm sure that you were tweeting and nobody was answering at one point.
Correct.
And then you just kept doing it. How did that buildup come about?
Yeah. So I started the Twitter chat, again, it's called Pop Chat, in January. So it's almost a year old. And the first chat, I had 3 people join, which, was a bit of a downer, but I, just went for it. And what's great about the Twitter chat is that I promise that it's every Friday at 1:00. So it really kept me accountable to show up every week at this specific time. And as I'm sure that's the best way to build something, is to be consistent. And because I promised even though it was a small audience, because I promised a small group of people that this was happening every Friday, that allowed me to really build. But I would say just in general, even before I started the Twitter chat, fangirling and pop culture really just started becoming, I finally let that be part of my personal brand. Because as a marketing professional, I've spent years climbing a corporate ladder. As I mentioned, I'm an instructor at a university. So I always felt like I had to be this sort of polished, buttoned up version of myself. And when I was building my brand that way, it didn't feel authentic. So it wasn't until I said, you know what? I like marketing, and I also like the Backstreet Boys and the Jonas Brothers and all of these other things. And I decided to take that leap and let that part of my personality show versus like always acting like, oh, I'm a marketing authority and come to me for your marketing tips. No, it's really just a fun place where we can talk about marketing while also talking about concerts and fangirling and music, but also maybe learn something. So that was the big light bulb moment for me that I had probably about this time last year.
And when you did like open that up and let everyone see that other side of you, like this is, I'm sure you were just so much more comfortable. You're like, oh my God, like now everything that I like, it is your personality. It is who you are. You know, it's been a part of your life for so long. And you just like think about little things and, you know, as a fangirl, you just pay attention to the smaller details. Like, you know, when the Backstreet Boys like wore this outfit to a photo shoot, you probably, you know why XYZ because they have this layout for this album. And there's just things, and that's marketing.
Right.
You know, these artists are, you know, they're doing marketing for their label and things like that. So it's just, yeah, I just think for myself as well, like being a fangirl is never cool. Me, like being the girl that liked the Jonas Brothers in school, it wasn't a cool thing to do. And now, you know, I graduated, I work into the industry, I've worked in radio.
Wow.
It is the cool thing to do because everybody loves, you know, like, oh my God, the Jonas Brothers got back together and it was the biggest comeback ever. And I'm like, you guys are going to the show now. And you're saying like, oh my God, I've loved them for so long. But when I liked them, because I liked them publicly, it wasn't a cool thing to do. But I've always been myself. And I think just being a fan of these has gotten me to where I am because I get to sit down in the room with these higher ups and they're like, oh, Julie knows that for fun.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't, I'm sure you feel the same. It doesn't feel like work.
Exactly. Yeah. I just suppressed my real personality. I mean, my friends and even my coworkers, they knew I liked the Backstreet Boys and that even Britney Spears, I'm a huge Britney Spears fan. But it never really became, I was never really comfortable talking about it, especially talking about my field, talking about marketing through this lens. And I always just felt like such a poser to give marketing advice and you know, try to educate people about this field that I love, but to always make it super polished and professional. You know, for instance, I tweeted the other day, the Backstreet Boys had the 20th anniversary of their Black and Blue tour, and their social media team did a recap of their press tour where they went around the world in 100 hours. And I tweeted and I said, look, this is what marketing was like before social media. You would have to travel the world. You would have to get on TRL. You would have to secure all this TV. Like that was the vehicle for marketing. So I love to use also just nostalgia to compare how things were versus how they are now in the age of social media and all of these great marketing tools we have at our fingertips these days.
If Twitter was around when like the Backstreet Boys were, you know, prime time, do you think you would have had a fan account for the Backstreet Boys?
Oh gosh, probably. I mean, we all had like our GeoCities websites back in the day. Gosh, it would have been easier for me to find other fangirls probably safely. I know like in the AOL days, I would enter chat rooms that I was probably too young to be in and poke around there. But yeah, it would have been a completely different landscape for sure.
Because I've had a few people on the podcast and a lot of them work in the industry because it started out, they had these fan accounts and their fan accounts just turned into the artists seeing like they're graphic designers, they're making fan edits. And for example, someone came on and Jess, and she now does graphic design for Miley Cyrus, like for her albums and stuff. And it all started because she had a Miley Cyrus fan account and just was tweeting. So it's just crazy. How would you tell someone to use like Twitter for like a marketing strategy? Like what advice would you give?
As a brand or just as an individual?
I think as a brand,
Mhm.
I think you are a brand. I think everybody's is a personal brand.
Yeah.
So yeah, say like as a resume, like do you see Twitter as a resume?
I do kind of see it as a living, breathing extension of who you are. And it's such a better place to illustrate who you are beyond your resume. I always say a resume is just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, but your online presence is boundless. And even when you feel like your resume doesn't isn't powerful enough. Maybe you feel like you don't have the right experience or you haven't been in the field long enough or you can never make the career change that you want. Twitter and just blogging and having your own platform online is your rebuttal to that. You can really prove people wrong by creating content and demonstrating what you know, which can be counter to what your resume might say about you. So it's really a no-brainer. It allows you to take your brand, your future and opportunities that you want into your own hands because you're building it and showing people who you are and what you know.
Definitely, I agree. It's
Yeah.
Ian, just like me following you because I thought you would be a great network. I think
Thank
also
you.
using it as engaging in conversation, even if you don't know the person, if you have something to say and there's just a conversation going on, jump in, you have an
Mhm.
opinion, obviously do it in, the right way, like not to be ignorant or anything like that. Just, if you have a good input or there's a conversation going on that you think you have knowledge on,
Mhm.
um, I just think Twitter has evolved so much in the
Yeah.
past few years, especially I think even this past year with everything going on,
Yeah.
that it's just a huge tool right now for any industry, any individual.
It's just a place where you can really be human. I mean, I feel like we're seeing that on TikTok now, compared to just, I think back to, I mean, Instagram, where again, we always kind of curated this perfect aesthetic. It was always showing people all the cool things that you're doing. But with Twitter, I mean, you're really just sharing your thoughts and your ideas, which there's not really a lot of vanity to that. So I think it's just a great place where you can just come as you are and really just be yourself, which is how I've fallen in love with it, especially like you said, this past year. I mean, this time last year, I was just kind of poking around. I wasn't really tweeting much. I was mostly just a lurker. But I've really found fellow fangirls and found an audience of what I think are like-minded people who I really enjoy connecting with this year.
Definitely, yeah. I think this year also just kind of changed the game for a lot of things
Yeah.
that's going on. Do you think you being a fan of the Backstreet Boys inspired you to pursue marketing or anything like that?
Yes, absolutely yes, because I think back to how I first got interested in this field, and it really all stems from my teeny bopper magazines from the 90s. Every weekend or so, I would go to the mall with my cousin, who was a few years older than me, and we would go to Walden Books or the newsstand, and we would get a Tiger Beat or a Teen Beat, a Teen People, any of those magazines, and we would trade them and look through all the posters and everything. But I feel like I consume them in a different way than my peers did, with just a different fascination. Like I didn't just go and flip through and look at the posters. Like I analyzed the layout, the colors, the photography, the advertisements, the headlines, just the copywriting, everything about it. And if you think about it, before social media, that was content. It was just print content, and we got it less frequently and not really in real time. But that is when I just fell in love with content creation, and that led me, in middle school I took yearbook class, and then in high school I took newspaper, and it just allowed me to it led me on this creative path that I've really loved, and it's just always been part of who I am. And I think as a lot of us grow up, we kind of lose parts of our childhood and think about, okay, now I'm in college, let me get serious about what I want to do. But for me, I wish I realized it all along, but that's been part of my personality since I was a kid. And I do feel like when I got to college, I still majored in advertising and PR and, I took some journalism courses, but I wish I stuck on this music path more so than I did. I always thought, okay, I have to go and work for a corporation now and sell products. I didn't really think that I could pursue it in a way where I could apply marketing to music. So that is just some advice I would have for people is if you're stuck or you don't know what your niche is or what it is that you want to contribute to the world, think back to your childhood, because that passion that you had then is probably still with you. And if you give yourself that liberty to just let it out and to just be who you are and not, strip away those childhood fascinations because you feel like they're not professional or they're not appropriate anymore, you might be wrong. It's kind of the same thing with, we compare fangirling. How is that any different to, a man and his love of sports teams or Marvel comics,
I say that all the time. Girls camping out for the tickets or waiting for tickets or going to the same concert, or same tour multiple times. I'm like, okay, you guys are watching basketball, and I'm a sports fan, and I'm like, it's the same thing. You guys buy all these jerseys for these players, and then get traded, and you still buy another jersey, or you go, and you go watch them at this team. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
it's absolutely. Just because it's females liking something. That's really it.
And I think about, when I worked in a corporate environment, you would walk by, someone's cubicle and they would have, like football player bobbleheads and stuff. Like, okay, I'm going to put my Backstreet Boys Funkos on my on my cubicle shelf too. It's all just relative to what you love. I think we all should be more comfortable embracing that. And especially when it comes to networking. I mean, there's such conversation starters to know that side of someone's personality versus always portraying this facade of professionalism. I'm not saying we shouldn't be professional, but I'm just saying we're multidimensional people and we should let that out a little bit more.
110%. Be yourself in a professional way, don't shy away from who you actually are.
Right.
I saw that Nick Carter, he now does live Twitch streams.
Yes.
What do you think about that? I mean, I feel like he's probably the only one of the Backstreet Boys doing like a whole nother marketing side of things for himself and his brand.
Yeah.
Do you think the other members are missing out on this opportunity, or he's just kind of thinking ahead? They have their families. They don't really care anymore. They know if they announce, they know when they announce another album or another tour, that people are going to buy it.
Yeah.
Or how do you feel about that?
So I think that is another thing that's just very true to Nick, because Nick at heart will tell you he's a gamer. He's a gaming nerd. And that's really what Twitch is known for, is it's gaming. So that is something where I think he really set out to go on there because he loves gaming, and he realized, okay, this could also be a place where I build my brand and build my audience and release solo music, which he just did a week or two ago. And I just think that move is very authentic to who he is. Whereas AJ, he's got some solo things going on, and he's been going live on Instagram a lot more, and just, it's about finding the platform that I think is true to you. And because Nick is such a gamer, I think he's really found his home on Twitch. And, especially in this environment right now with what 2020 has brought us, just how we're craving live content of some sort just to see these guys because they're not on tour. I think it's been a really brilliant move. He's also had merchandise come from it. It just suits him. It makes sense. It doesn't feel forced.
Definitely. And it also kind of, I think, hits a whole nother audience for him because of, their audience is majority female women. And the guy, I don't game, but I would go see the Backstreet Boys. But then if I see, like, I've clicked on a couple of his Twitches, I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, you get his personality. But I'm sure now there's gamers that are watching and they're like, Nick Carter, why is he beating me in this game? Or why is he doing this? And now they're jumping into his Twitch. So I think he's also just hitting different audiences, which is huge.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. He can bring in that whole new audience of gamers that might not be Backstreet Boy fans, but now are probably, would check out his solo music or whatnot just because he's piqued their interest. So,
or if they're
definitely.
younger, they when you hear Nick Carter, they might not even thinking about the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
You know, like
I
when
know.
if it's a younger audience, they could hear Nick Carter and then they're like, oh yeah, the streamer, which is
Yeah.
crazy. It could, now has kind of two lanes to go to because it depends on kind of who's watching and, if Twitch is putting him on the front page of, of X game and now all these younger kids are clicking in, they're like, oh, Nick Carter, the Twitch streamer, and
Right.
it's kind of crazy how that would work.
It reminds me, I forgot who tweeted it. It was a long time ago, but someone, my age was talking about their nephew or someone that described Justin Timberlake as an actor. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Really?
Like that's how, it's like they have this second act that another generation sees them for, and they don't really know about what they were, who they were originally. So yeah, that could very well be the case for Nick Carter as well.
It's scary. That scares me. I also
Time.
saw
What is time? What is happening?
I saw an interview with Finn from Stranger Things. And I think he was just with a fan. I'm not really sure the context of it.
Yeah.
And he was she was probably 7. He was just trying to like make conversation, make her not like uncomfortable or make it awkward. He's like, oh, so like, are you like a fan of One Direction? Like I really like Harry's new album or something. And she said, who?
Oh no.
I mean, One Direction hasn't been together for how long? And she's only 7 years old.
Oh, that's true.
But it's scary because when I think of 7-year-olds, I think of of course, I love One Direction even when I wasn't 7, but
yeah,
I think of you 7-year-olds are going to be the ones also streaming the music. So it's just crazy.
That's wild.
So
yeah, or some people might not know who Destiny's Child is. I mean, I saw it's one of my favorite series on Instagram is when ESPN talks to some of their college athletes and they do like a 90s test and they ask them if they, they'll show them a VCR or something and say, what is this or who is this? And they showed them Destiny's Child and they were like, I think that's Beyonce. It's wild. Just what's happening with time.
That's amazing. Who was your first concert ever?
That actually, my first concert was an NSYNC concert. Surprisingly,
mine was Aaron Carter.
I'm an NSYNC fan. I don't hate them. I like their music. I think they're super talented, but the Backstreet Boys had my heart first, and that's just where my loyalty lied. But NSYNC did a concert at a local fair here in 1998, and Britney Spears was their opening act. And I remember saying to my cousin, who's Britney Spears at the time? It was that long. And it was a small concert. So it was a great kind of first concert experience. It was at a fair. So,
to say that now that was your first concert is huge.
Yeah, definitely.
That's incredible.
And I remember it pretty vividly too. Yeah. Good times.
That's awesome. I mean, I feel like the NSYNC Backstreet Boys battle, you can say, like, I do think if you liked Backstreet Boys, you still loved NSYNC. You just preferred one way more than the other. You didn't hate the other band.
Yeah, I still bought the albums and stuff. I didn't buy like their merch or anything, or really like follow. I didn't have any of their posters up in my room or anything, but I followed them with one eye open for sure.
Just kind of making sure you're watching what they're doing and what the Backstreet Boys need to be doing.
Right.
Are you a big concert goer in general?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So with obviously this year going on, was there a concert that you missed out on or you skipped because something else came up and you're like, oh, I'll just see them like when they come into town next time? And now the year we had, you're kind of kicking yourself in the butt. And you're like, why didn't I just go see them when they were already here?
Mm-hmm. I actually am really, really lucky. I've been to 2 concerts in 2020. I saw a 98 Degrees. No, I guess it wasn't a reunion tour. It was just them. And I saw them at a local casino here. And the very next day, I was leaving on a trip to go to Argentina, to go to South America, to see the Backstreet Boys. This was in March, the first week of March. And my husband has always wanted to go to Buenos Aires, and I wanted to see the DNA tour again. And the Backstreet Boys announced the South American tour. And I text him the dates, and I was like, haha, maybe we should go to Buenos Aires now and go see the Backstreet Boys. And he's like, seriously? I'm like, yeah, I'll buy tickets if you really want to go and make a trip out of it. And he was so on board. We made it was a whole week long trip, obviously, and we did other things, but the Backstreet Boys were the main reason that we ended up planning it. I was kind of joking at first, but we were kind of due for a big trip. We hadn't been on one in a while. So I saw them, I want to say it was March 7th was the date of the concert. And they still had a few more cities to do in South America. And that following Saturday, a week after mine, they were supposed to be in Rio and they canceled it. And that's when they came back. So if my trip was a week later, I would have completely missed it. So I feel really fortunate. Even talking to other Backstreet Boys fans in the fandom, they're like, oh my gosh, you saw them in 2020, which is wild. I just kind of stacked that trip on early in the year and got really lucky.
It feels like so long ago.
I know, it really does. But I was supposed to see them again in West Palm Beach in September, which got canceled. It's rescheduled for June. So hopefully that will happen.
Well, you saw him 2020 and then you get to see him 2021.
Yeah,
hopefully.
exactly. So I really can't complain.
What concert are you most excited to see in 2021 besides the Backstreet Boys?
Oh man. It's funny. I haven't even really thought about it. That's the only one I really have tickets for. I'm trying. I actually have a good answer for this. I want to go see Usher's residency in Las Vegas, which kicks off next summer, which is going to be really good.
That would be a good one. Did you see the Backstreet Boys residency? Did you go out to Vegas for that?
I did twice. Once for my bachelorette party, which was awesome, but we weren't in the pit for my bachelorette party. We had seats and they weren't great seats. I really couldn't see much. There was a really tall person in front of me. So when I went back, I said, you know what, forget it. I'm going in the pit. I'm going to do meet and greet. So that was the first and only time I've met the Backstreet Boys was in Vegas. And it's such a great venue because it's really small. So it's just really intimate compared to these big arenas and stuff. So that was in 2019. So yeah, I've been seeing a lot of them.
It really is incredible how the longevity of their career. It is like no other. It is incredible.
I want to say thank you, but I can't take credit for it, I guess. I don't know. I guess I have supported them, but thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Because of you and you and your group of friends and fans that are allowing that to happen. Because if you're not going to the residency twice and buying a meet and greet and getting the pit ticket, they can't keep doing it.
Right.
It is because of their fans, 110%.
Yeah. I'm hoping for their 30-year anniversary, they go back and do another Vegas residency. That's kind of the rumor or the wish that's been swirling amongst the fandom that we want. But we'll see. Because it's also like, even if NSYNC didn't break up and they were who they were right now, do we think they'd still have the longevity and that they would be able to tour like the Backstreet Boys tours? That's a great question. I don't know. I would hope so because of course, Justin Timberlake has had an incredible career, arguably more iconic than the Backstreet Boys. I guess I can say that. I mean, he's a legend, and so talented.
He's an actor.
I think about NSYNC fans who, maybe they've seen Justin, but to feel this nostalgia that I've been able to feel by seeing the Backstreet Boys all these years later, it's like an out of body experience, honestly. And you'll feel it too, and you probably have as the Jonas Brothers have come back. I still say my favorite concert was when the Backstreet Boys did kind of a comeback tour in 2013. It had been, a couple years since they had done a tour or since I had seen them. And it wasn't a particularly flashy show. The album didn't do super great, but it was just the first time I had seen them really as an adult. And it was just like, you feel something, it was just magical to just, to be sitting there and to feel like these flashbacks to my childhood for the first time in such a real way, besides just listening to it on my computer and whatnot. It's such an experience when you can feel like your group that you've worshiped forever has come full circle into your adult life. And I wish that for NSYNC fans. I'm sure they get it a little bit with Justin, that they've seen him over the years, but to have all five and to see that they're still together, I mean, I think we all feel super fortunate that they're still around.
I mean, I mean, yeah, I know because the Jonas Brothers coming back this past year, they're touring. It's just like, you just can't stop smiling the whole entire time.
Absolutely.
And like, it's like flashbacks of all the memories of like, I've like seen them on the Today Show, Good Morning Mary, and just thinking about all those little things. It's like, okay, they did break up and that sucks. But it's like, but they're back and we got to make this possible. And they sold out these arenas because we cared and we bought the music, and yeah, it's just something like no other.
Yeah. And I mean, especially with a group, I mean, just there's so many things that could go wrong. One person could just throw off the whole thing. And yeah, Kevin took a few years off to focus on family and stuff, but to keep that dynamic intact for so many years and to just get everyone on the same page. I often think about just all the decisions they've had to make over these 30 years. And they've, of course, had some blow ups and arguments, but they still get on with the show. So it's really special.
It just proves that they all genuinely love what they do.
Right.
That,
right.
There might be bad blood in a certain situation, but they suck it up and they get into the studio and they record. Or, they suck it up and just don't sit near each other, before going on stage.
I think they're close, but yeah, they've definitely had.
But in those moments where things, because kind of, there's obviously on the road, I'm sure things have happened that they just hate each other sometimes.
Yeah, they've described it as a marriage. It's like being married to five people, and just now that they have families, organizing their schedules and even the sacrifice that they make. I think about their wives and their kids, to have them away for such extended periods of time. It's just, I think I can speak on behalf of the fangirls that we're so appreciative and thankful for everything that they do and that they're still showing up for us.
Definitely, which you feel appreciated that they still come and they're still performing and they're still giving it their all.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Absolutely.
I super appreciate you coming on. This is fun.
Of course,
and getting a little inside scoop on the Backstreet Boys.
Of course. Talking about my favorite things. Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Fangirl Fantasy Podcast. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys all next week. Thank you.
Bye.